Okay guys, bear with me. I have printed out all of the recent relevant documents thus far, and I have gone over them and I have taken some notes, and I want to go over them with you guys. And I am starting back from the PCA that was released December 2022. I am pointing out some things regarding that, and then I will work my way forward. Hopefully you guys can understand this video and I'm not jumping all over the place. Now, I still get, and I know that there would always be people who disagree with me and where I'm coming from regarding this case, especially with the snippet of text messaging and the transcript of the 911 call being released. There are still some people who are going to miss the mark. There are still some people who are going to be in the defense of Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk in the prosecution, and that's their prerogative, okay? However, with the snippet of text that just been released and the 911 transcript, along with other, instances within these documents, it supports what I have been saying, that Dylan Mortensen was not in shock for no 8 hours, that there's more to this story, that she did not stay in her room the entire time. Like, just pay attention to the video, okay, before you want to try and argue with me. Now, again, I am not claiming, and I have never claimed to be 100% right regarding this case. I know I am not, because I don't have all the information. All right, geniuses, I understand that. However, my research and my education, I refuse to believe the narrative that's been pushed out there regarding this case. Even now, after the snippet of the text messaging being released, even now, I still get people who comment. I saw some comments last night under my most recent video of people saying, what would the motive be? What would the motive be in these friends wanting to have their other friends unalive? What would be the motive? And I think a lot of people are confused when the word motive, gets tossed out there, because some people believe that you need a motive in order for a crime to exist, and that is not the case. Yes, a motive is great in cases, and it helps connect the dots to investigators, detectives, to a jury if a trial happens to occur. A motive helps connect the dots, and it makes the crime happening. It makes it make more sense to the public, even though no crime makes sense, because the way that people unalive people, it's just none of that makes sense, okay? But a motive does not have to exist in order for a crime to be valid. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing the mark, because they are like, what would this girl's motive be? I don't know. What was Chris Watts' motive in killing his family and his children? What was Scott Peterson's motive in killing his wife and his unborn child? Okay, what was Alex Murdaugh's motive in killing his wife and his son? I can go on and on. Just because a case or a crime has a motive, that does not mean that if a crime didn't have a motive, that crime would lose its value, if that makes sense. Okay, but let's move on. I took a bunch of notes and I'm going to try my best to get through all of them. So if you see me looking down, it is because I am looking at my notes from my research. Alright, so again, we're going back to the PCA. The original PCA that was released December 22 is either completely false or it is completely true. Now, in my opinion, I believe that it is completely false. And maybe not completely, but there's a lot of parts in there that's completely false. And I say that because given the new information we just discovered, given the information from the Franks hearing, from other hearings that existed this year alone, it contradicts with what is in this PCA. Alright, so we know that this PCA, the probable cause affidavit, it was authored by Brett Payne, pictured here, who was one of the initial detectives that was on the scene at the 1122 Kings Road house. Now, a PCA is a sworn document made by an arresting officer or law enforcement agent, aka Brett Payne. Now, in previous videos of mine, I discussed my lack of confidence in Brett Payne and the things that he say after one of BK hearings where he was on the stand and Ann Taylor was questioning him regarding missing evidence or evidence they don't have and evidence they since then have been requesting. And Brett Payne snarkily stated, "I am not the custodian of the evidence." Basically, it's not my job to keep in track of the evidence and to give you the evidence. His demeanor to me was very cocky, very nonchalant, I just don't want to be here right now. This is the person who authored the PCA, that sworn statement. Okay, and that statement doesn't seem, his account of this entire PCA, it just doesn't seem true. It seems very fabricated to fit the narrative that they wanted the public to know, and that's just my opinion. You can believe what you want. Okay, So then the PCA, it goes on to say that Brett Payne and the other officer that was there entered the King's Road house on the bottom level, which is the lower level where Bethany and eventually Dylan was. And then it goes on to say, he states, Brett Payne, he states, I then walked upstairs to the second floor to Coronado room, and Brett Payne stated that just as he approached the room, he could see a body, and that body was later identified as being Xana. And he said that she was deceased from wounds caused by a sharp edged weapon. The PCA then goes on to say also in the room was a male deceased, later to be determined as Ethan Chapin. Now, Brett Payne, he then goes on to say he went up to the third floor where he found a dog in Kaylee's old room, which we know was Murphy. He then says he entered Maddie's room where he could see two females in a single bed. Both Kaylee and Maddie were deceased with visible stab wounds. Brett Payne then alleges in these documents he found the tan leather knife sheath next to Maddie on the right side of her body. The PCA then states DM, Dylan Mortensen, and Bethany Funk both made statements during interviews that the occupants in the house were in the rooms by 2 a.m. and asleep in their room by 4 a.m. And I want to know, how did Bethany and Dylan determine that? If Bethany was on a lower level, how did she know that everybody was in their room or asleep by 4 a.m. and like home by 2 a.m.? And the same with Dylan Mortensen, unless there's some group chat or these girls were outside of their rooms during that time. And then the PCA goes on to state that this is with the exception of Xana, who received a DoorDash at approximately 4 a.m. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the timeline of Dylan Mortensen that's stated in this PCA. Now, again, follow me here. I promise I'm getting to a point. Okay, so the PCA states Dylan, she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. She says she thought she heard Kaylee say, I think there's someone here. And my question is, so they in the PCA it states that when Dylan heard Kaylee allegedly say, I think there's someone here, it was shortly after she heard what was Kaylee playing with her dog. Now, in my opinion, those are two different sounds. Okay, playing with your dog is joyous, it's playful, it's completely different than saying, I think there's someone here. And my question is, in what tone did Dylan allegedly hear Kaylee say, I think there's someone here? Was it an exciting tone, a shocked tone, a scared tone, a frightened tone? Was she yelling it? Like, what tone? Because that matters a lot. Then the PCA goes on to state that Xana was likely awake and on TikTok at 4:12 a.m., so it could have been her phone that said, or where Dylan heard, I think there's someone here. Now, my thing is, Dylan know Kaylee's voice. They've been living together for quite some time. She know Kaylee's voice. So if she believes she heard Kaylee say, I think there's someone here, then I'm quite sure that's what she heard. But they're trying to pass it off as if, oh, it could have been Xana because she was on her phone at 4:12 on TikTok. Like, what? Okay, now we get to the good part. DM stated she looked out her door and didn't see anything after she heard the comment, someone is here. DM said she opened her door for a second time when she heard she thought was Xana crying, which was coming from Xana's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say, it's okay, I'm going to help you. Dylan stated she opened her door for a third time and saw this figure that she described pretty good, in my opinion, and she described them as being dressed in black with bushy eyebrows, which later was quite important. Those bushy eyebrows, it was quite an important description, an important trait that she described on this alleged intruder. Now, the PCA claims that these unalivings happened between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. The PCA also mentioned the Latin shoe print that was found outside of Dylan Mortensen's bedroom door. And just to play devil's advocate for a moment, you guys know I am good at that regarding this case. What if that Latin shoe print was found outside Dylan Mortensen's door because this alleged intruder had some sort of conversation with her? That's just my thought. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the motion in limine number 7, which is the witness ID by bushy eyebrows, and by witness that is Dylan Mortensen. DM stated that this person, this alleged intruder, had bushy eyebrows. She also goes on to state, or the document also goes on to state that she is the only person alive who's seen this alleged intruder.